Good evening. I would like to take another opportunity to talk about some of the great things that are happening here in Pelham schools. This year we focused a lot on math, and we had a couple of different math committees that I'd like to inform you about. Some of the highlights of those math committees and what we've working towards and what they accomplished this year, and what some of those goals are for next year. And with me I have Director of Curriculum and Instruction, Sarah Marandos, and we're going to answer some questions. So Sarah, can you tell me a little bit about some of the existing math committees that we have?
So we've had two committees this year that have been really working in tandem to achieve the same goals. The first one I'd like to talk about is our K12 Curriculum Committee, which has been comprised of teachers K-12 from all three buildings. And we really met every single month and looked at some of our broader goals that as a team we decided on. So the first three things that we really looked at were our definitions of fluency and accuracy, which was a little shift at our elementary school, but I think we made some really good gains there, and you'll see those on the report cards. Also, we made some vocabulary lists, which were a product of our math implementation team, which we'll talk a little bit about later. And lastly, we really looked around our word problems and our common language that we want to develop K through 12 on how students solve word problems. So our curriculum committee, again, was teachers only. It was a very dedicated group of teachers, and so I want to take a moment just to thank all of them for their hard work. And we'll be continuing this work again next year as we dive a little deeper into the units, working with our math consultant, and some of our assessments and how we can make sure that they're better aligned to the goals that we have in Pelham. So that's the first team.
What a great idea. So this team was already in effect, and as you stated, it's made up of just educators, and we'll talk about what other committees are in place. But you came up with a way to come up with common vocabulary for our K-12 students to help with that as they progress through the grades, with fluency and accuracy as one of those, and also with the development of common language and how to address word problems?
Yes, and I think that came from our parents. I think our parents have really been looking for ways that they can support their children with math at all grade levels, and so our vocabulary list will shortly be posted on our website so that parents, if they want to kind of explore what those common vocabulary words are, those will be there. And we actually had a pretty exciting connection with the high school for the word problems. Is our art teacher, Dan Jones, who teaches graphic arts, has designed a poster that's actually going to be posted in every single math classroom in Pelham, so that we can really start to, again, build that language starting in kindergarten, so that we're continuing that process throughout all the grades. So we're continuing to use that same language and same process, and everyone's getting that same experience.
And I know that this process was piloted already by one of our high school teachers, and she had such great success with it. She brought it to the K-12 committee, and that's when we adopted it across the whole curriculum to create that common language, because my understanding is we had many students may have had the math skills to tackle some of these problems, but couldn't digest the language around some of the problems. So how does this word problem process unify and make that better for our students?
So we've been very fortunate at the high school. Kathy Caruso, who is our new dean of math, had been working with a group of math National Honor Society members on SAT words and focusing on how to best problem solve around the SAT, and that's where that word problem strategy kind of developed. And we thought, why don't we bring this to the other two schools and start them early, so as they continue and they assess throughout the years, they're really using those same strategies, and it's not different in different classrooms or different in different buildings. It's just really building on those skills. So we've been very fortunate to have the work of those students really progress on, and that SAT work is also posted on our website, so that's another great resource for parents if they want to check that out.
What a great opportunity for students to develop leadership skills as well. And I know we're not going to go into detail around what Kathy did, but that was an amazing program to help. And so really that was driven not only by teacher directive, but also student directive and success with it. So then it was brought to the other schools as well. And then obviously incorporating the graphic design of Dan and his group. Awesome. Well, that's a lot of the successes that they've had this year. Can you tell me about now what you have planned for next year?
So for our K-12 Curriculum Committee next year, we've started work with Rob Lukasiak, who's the president of the New Hampshire Council of Teacher of Mathematics, and he's already started in the last week working with our secondary teachers, and we're going to also extend that to elementary once we kind of get a little further down into the summer months. But some of the things that we're really looking at as part of our curriculum committee are the work of our grade 4 team, who's departmentalizing, which means that they're going to have specific teachers teaching math and specific teachers teaching ELA as a way to really hone their skills and become experts in their subject. So that's a pilot that we're doing, and they've done a lot of research on this based on other school districts and best practices, so we hope to see kind of some of the success of that.
And I'm going to interrupt a little bit. This was also a passion of the teachers themselves.
Absolutely.
This was a teacher initiative coming forth, and then we were able to support it, saying, yeah, this does fit into what we hope to gain stronger math instruction with our teachers.
Exactly, and I think I really look forward to seeing those results and seeing if we can maybe replicate that in other grades if that goes well. Some other things that we're really working on, as I mentioned, we're going to be doing a deep curriculum dive with the help of our outside consultant. We're really looking at developing some performance tasks using the QPA, which is Quality Performance Assessment Model, at all grade levels, and that's going to be a district-wide component, but I think with the help of our consultant that will really be enhanced in math. We also have recently hired our new math coach at the middle school, which will really work well with our teachers in terms of looking at the curriculum, looking at the assessments, looking at the instruction, and really making sure we're using those best practices in all of those areas. And she'll be an important member of our curriculum team that's going to come back, and we're really going to look at our 6, 7, 8 curriculum sequence that we have. So right now, we have an advanced math in 6th grade and accelerated in 7th and 8th, and we're really looking at the best way that we can maximize the time spent on the units and making sure our students are really prepared when they go to high school. So I think math placement at the middle school next year will be a big initiative. I think we're going to really look at some practices to put in place, and we'll communicate those early to parents so that everybody can kind of be on the same page, and that's definitely one of the goals of our curriculum team next year. Also, I think at the high school, we've got some exciting things happening at the high school with some new teachers, and I think that we're really looking at just making sure our curriculum is sequenced in a way at the high school that our students are really successful and prepared for whatever they go on to after they leave Pelham High School. So those are kind of our big goals.
Some exciting stuff that you're working on and continuing forward in. The math instruction, and hopefully our results will be shown by that as well. So we also have another committee.
Yeah, and I'd like you to tell me a little bit about it. So I've been on the committee for 2 years now. It's our math implementation team, but can you talk a little bit about kind of the makeup of the committee, the goals, what we did this year, and maybe what we're planning to do next year?
Yeah. So the implementation committee complements the K12 committee. This one also has educators on that committee. Many of them are the same as on your committee, which is great to help make sure that we complement each other with that work. But we also have a lot of parents involved, school board members, other administrators that are involved. And so through that dialogue, we're able to find out what the concerns are of either the parents or the school board, or what we're hearing in the community, some of the challenges that might be happening with our educators themselves. And so it really is an open dialogue for all of us to start tackling math together and really focusing on solutions to move the district forward. And so really that is part of the committee is made up a little bit different, and it's got a broader scope around some of the things that we're looking at. You asked about what are some of the things we're looking at. So we've been talking about competency-based education for a while, and personalized learning. And some of the words that we use are formatives and summatives, but some of the feedback that we're getting from some of the parents is not necessarily everyone quite understands how to implement that appropriately or in the same way consistently. And so one of those things is we want to make sure that our teachers understand what formative is and how to use that to inform the instruction and prepare those students for the summatives, and making sure that those formatives are also assessing what they will be assessed on the summatives. If the summatives aren't aligned to the formatives, then are we setting those students up for failure? We also found out that because we're a larger group, are those summatives being given under the same circumstances, whether that's in 8th grade or in high school? And so those are some of the first things that we discovered that we really need to focus a little bit of our PD on going forward is how do we use formatives effectively going forward, and how do we tie that into the summatives and making sure that those summatives are where they need to be. And that ties into the QPAs that you're talking about, the quality performance assessments, that will update those summatives as well. So that was one of the areas that we started to look at. Another area that came up where there were some inconsistencies is the use of rubrics. We got a lot of kudos with some of our instruction, and the rubrics are in great shape and really help guide the students and what those expectations are and whether they've met the learning standard or not, and whether they've met that competency. But not all the rubrics were up to par. So we really have identified some of those areas where those rubrics really need to be made more standardized. And so that's one of the areas that we're working on as well, is improving those rubrics and making sure that they are helping our students reach that success. Other areas are parent communication. I personally have talked about my children don't go to this district, but sometimes they come home, and as an educator, sometimes it's challenging to help with a 3rd grader or even a 1st grader with their homework with some of those worksheets, and they're not really clear necessarily on how we can assist them as parents, and we still want to assist those students as parents. So we want to keep parents more informed and more involved in that process, K through 12. And that also has to do with the placement process that you brought up with, and I know about that plan and how we're going to communicate that going forward as well, identifying what those are, and really improving that parent communication, because that was clearly heard from that committee that we need to improve in that area around communicating that and enabling parents to participate. So those are some of the highlights that we've done this year with that math implementation team.
Yeah, I think the other thing that we did this year was we had a really beneficial site visit to another district that really kind of showed us some of those options on math placement. I think we'll continue to research and really look for those best practices. So I think that's really important. What are some of the goals, do you think, for the implementation team for next year? Because we're going to continue this committee, and again, we're always looking for more people to join if anybody is interested. But what do you think some of the goals for next year are?
Well, our number one priority that we agreed upon would be coming up with a purpose of grading statement, and really to help guide us. Are we going to change grading, or are we not going to change grading? That was clearly a conversation that happened this year. And so really we have to define what is the purpose of grading, and help educate people around that. And that really the first step that committee identified was, let's define our purpose of grading and then help communicate that out. Then that will be our guiding statement for any future changes that may or may not happen. Is, does this fit into what our guiding principle is? And so that's really one of our first, our first task of next year, is really moving forward with that grading statement. We've also talked about the 8th grade algebra alignment. It was one of the areas that definitely came up. We want algebra in the 8th grade, but we want our students to be successful in 8th grade, and we want that progression, as you talked about. Right now, we have identified, are they truly going on to successful areas, or are they repeating some of the same skills and areas, and that can be frustrating for a student. So we're really looking at the 8th grade alignment with algebra. Is it the right thing for our students? And that's also tied into the placement process, because are all the appropriate students who can be successful are there, but our students who may not be successful also being set up for failure. And so we want to make sure that all students are getting that just right learning. And so and also those courses are aligned appropriately. And so that's one of the main tasks next year, is really to align that 8th grade algebra course with the high school expectations as well. And through the math coach relationship, I think that will help. And then also for the new relationships that are establishing between the high school teachers and the middle school teachers. And we really understand that that is really strengthening, and those are becoming common expectations around how to align those things. Other things are, we've talked a little bit about already, the math course progression, both at the middle school level. Where do we go, and how do they demonstrate success along the way, and then also where do they go in the high school, and what is that math progression at the high school? And an area we've talked about are, do we have enough honors course options for our students, And do we have a way to adapt some other courses to become an honors option that doesn't put the responsibility solely on the students? And so that was a conversation that came up that I think we've made great progress in, and we're going to continue to make progress going forward. And we want to challenge our students, and we want to offer those challenges for all our students, but we also want to offer courses with the resources that we have that can help with wherever the student is in their math progression and math learning.
Yeah, absolutely. I think you've really done a nice job summarizing a lot of, the work that we've done and the work that we hope to do next year. And I think we would be remiss too not to mention the hard work that the elementary school has done this year with their My Math. This is their first year using that program. And through that process, we actually originally had a program called Alex in 5th grade. We actually brought it down to 4th grade based on teacher and parent recommendations, and so they actually just had that training on Monday. And so I just think the key here is that kind of collaboration that we've had and that open listening to feedback from all stakeholders. And I think we've done made a lot of nice gains this year.
Well, thank you for all your work with the teachers as well, and all the committee members and parents who volunteered, and anyone who wants to continue on those committees going forward. We are always looking for more people to be participate in those as well. So thank you, and thank you for taking the time for viewing this and getting the highlights of our math progression and math learning, and how we're moving math forward for our students of Pelham.
Great. Thank you.